Jason's backpack hit the soft, manicured grass of the headmaster's lawn with a dull, heavy thud. But the pain in his chest, a sharp, searing, and very real pain, was so much worse. Had he really, truly just been expelled? Just because he was a farmer's son? Principal Carter's cold, final words echoed in his head. A cruel, relentless loop. This school is for respectable and very powerful families, Jason. You do not belong here. Holding back the hot, shameful tears that were burning at the back of his eyes, Jason walked home. The weight of his own failure, and the deep and very real dread of having to see the look on his parents' faces, a heavy, suffocating blanket. But the next day, as a massive, black, and very expensive-looking helicopter roared over the school, and as every single privileged student and every single arrogant teacher froze in a state of a pure, unadulterated shock, the world was about to learn a very powerful lesson. Before we start this incredible story of injustice and redemption, do me a favor and like this video, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. Your support helps us to bring more of these powerful and very real stories to life. Now let's begin. Jason gripped the straps of his worn canvas backpack so tightly that his knuckles were white. He had never, in his entire life, felt more humiliated. Principal Carter's cold, piercing gaze bore into him, making him feel small, insignificant, and completely and utterly out of place. "You do not belong in this school, Jason," the man had said, his voice dripping with a quiet and very confident disdain. "This institution is for students with a real and a very promising potential. Students from respectable and very powerful families. It is not," he had finished. The words, a final, brutal slap in the face for farm boys. The words hit Jason like a physical blow. He had always known that he was different from the other students at the prestigious and very expensive Westbridge Academy. While they had arrived every single morning in their sleek, black chauffeur-driven cars, wearing their designer clothes and their expensive leather shoes, Jason had showed up in his second-hand sneakers, smelling faintly of the rich, dark soil. He had helped his father to till in the cold, pre-dawn hours, just before school. But he had never, not in his wildest, most insecure dreams, ever imagined that he would be thrown out just for that. He clenched his fists, his own voice now shaking. With a quiet and very righteous rage, Principal Carter had just smirked a cruel and very condescending smile. "Grades, my dear boy, are not enough. We have a reputation, a brand to maintain. And students like you, well, let's just say that you lower the standard. Guess you finally got what you deserved, farm boy," he had taunted, his voice aloud. In very public sound. Jason's jaw had tightened, but he had said nothing. He would not, he could not, give them the satisfaction of seeing him break. By the time he had reached his family's small and very humble home, his parents were already waiting for him on the front porch. His mother's kind, gentle eyes were already full of a deep and very maternal worry. His father's face was a grim and very stoic mask. His mother had gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. And his father, a man of a few simple words, had let out a long, heavy sigh and had pulled his son into a firm and very loving embrace. "We'll figure something out, son," he had said. But Jason could hear the deep and very real uncertainty in his own father's voice. The next morning, just as the first classes of the day were about to begin at Westbridge Academy, a deafening and very alien roar filled the sky. The students who had been gossiping and laughing on the perfectly manicured front lawn rushed outside, shielding their eyes against the bright morning sunlight as a massive black and very military-looking helicopter descended from the heavens. The powerful downwhirling blades sent a series of strong, violent gusts of wind rippling through the crowd, whipping the girls' hair around their faces and scattering the loose pages of their textbooks across the lawn. The teachers, their own faces a mask of a profound and very real confusion, exchanged nervous, worried glances. And Principal Carter, who had been in the middle of a very important phone call in his opulent first-floor office, stormed outside, his own face a deep, angry red, with a pure and very real frustration. But nobody Not a single person was listening. To him, all eyes, every single one, were now locked on the helicopter's side door as it slowly and with a great cinematic flourish swung open. A man whose very presence commanded an immediate and very real attention, stepped out. He was tall, dressed in a sharp, dark, and very expensive-looking suit, his polished, black shoes reflecting the stunned faces of the students and the staff. Behind him, two more men, both in identical expensive suits, followed their own expressions, as cool and as unreadable as stone. But it was the insignia, the small, golden, and very powerful insignia on the side of the helicopter, that sent a new and very different kind of shockwave through the crowd. Kingston Enterprises. Everyone in that school, in that city, in that state, knew that name. It was the largest and most powerful agricultural corporation in the entire country, corporate behemoth that controlled massive industries, from food production to land development. And the man who was now standing with a quiet and very powerful authority on their front lawn was none other than Samuel Kingston himself, one of the wealthiest and most influential figures in the entire business world. Principal Carter's anger, which had been so hot just a moment before, faltered, replaced now by a new and very different kind of flicker, a flicker of a deep and very real nervousness. He adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and stepped forward, his own face now a mask of a forced and very pathetic, polite smile. Samuel Kingston didn't reply immediately. He removed his dark, expensive sunglasses and scanned the crowd with a sharp and very analytical gaze before he finally, and with a great and very powerful deliberation, spoke. Gasps, a series of them, rippled through the stunned and very silent student body. Jason, the farm boy, the boy they had all laughed at just yesterday. The same insignificant Jason who had been so unceremoniously and so publicly thrown out of their school in disgrace. Principal Carter blinked, completely and utterly caught off guard, let out a small, forced, and very unconvincing chuckle. Samuel Kingston's eyes, which had been so cool and so analytical just a moment before, now darkened with a new and very different kind of light. I am aware of that, Principal Carter, he said, his own voice now a low and very dangerous sound. That is why I am here. Inside his small, quiet home, Jason was still in bed, staring up at the ceiling. He had spent most of the long, dark night replaying the events of the previous day, the profound and very public humiliation cutting deep into his young and very proud soul. His parents had tried to comfort him, but their own words, he knew, were laced with a deep and very real uncertainty. Out. Then he heard it. Jason shot up in bed, his own heart now pounding a new and very different kind of rhythm. Who in the world would be landing a helicopter in their small, forgotten town? His father was already at the front door, his own face pale with a profound confusion. Jason quickly threw on a shirt and ran outside, his own breath catching in his throat at the impossible and very surreal sight before him. Parked right outside their modest and very humble farmhouse was the same massive black helicopter that had just landed at Westbridge Academy, and stepping out of it, with the kind of quiet, powerful presence that could shake mountains, was Samuel Kingston. Jason could hardly breathe as the billionaire locked eyes with him and took a slow, deliberate step forward. He felt frozen in place as Samuel Kingston walked toward him, his expensive, polished shoes crunching against the simple, gravel driveway of their farmhouse. Samuel Kingston studied him for a long, silent moment, his gaze then sweeping around. At the modest, but very well-kept farmhouse, at the surrounding fertile fields, at the rusted, old pickup truck that was parked near the barn. His eyes then returned to Jason, and then to everyone's profound and very real shock. He extended his hand. Jason's father hesitated for a moment, and then he shook the billionaire's hand. Jason felt his stomach drop, the hot, fresh shame of that moment returning. Kingston's expression remained unreadable. Tell me what happened, he commanded. Jason hesitated, but his father gave him a reassuring nod. And so, taking a deep breath, he recounted everything. the principal's cruel and very unjust decision. The way that Mason and his friends had so publicly and so happily mocked him, and the way he had been so completely and so finally dismissed as if he and his entire life simply did not belong. By the time he had finished his story, his own hands were balled into tight, white-knuckled fists. There was a long, heavy silence. Kingston then turned to one of the two men who were standing a respectful distance behind him. And very detailed report on Westbridge Academy's board of directors and their entire administrative history, he said. Now, the assistant nodded immediately, and with a quiet, professional efficiency, he began to type into the tablet he was holding. Kingston then turned back to Jason, his own gaze now as intense and as hard as steel. "Do not tolerate injustice," he said, his voice a low and very dangerous sound. "Your father was one of the hardest working men I have ever had the privilege of knowing. And if you have even half of his determination, his character, then Westbridge has just made a very, very grave mistake." The roar of the helicopter blades filled Jason's ears as he strapped himself into the plush leather seat. He could hardly believe what was happening. Just yesterday he had been humiliated, expelled, and had felt like a complete and utter nobody. And now he was sitting beside Samuel Kingston, a billionaire whose very name carried more power than the entire, and now very insignificant, Westbridge Academy School Board combined. As the helicopter touched down on the lawn, Kingston unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out with the quiet, unshakable confidence of a man who owned everything he walked upon. And Jason followed, his own heart now pounding, not with fear, but with a new and very different kind of rhythm. A rhythm of a dawning and very beautiful justice. Principal Carter stood among the crowd, his own face now a pale, sweaty mask, as he recognized the man who was now striding, with a great and very powerful deliberation, toward him. A profound and very heavy silence fell over the lawn. Everyone, every single person stared at him, waiting for his next words. He turned back to the now visibly sweating Principal Carter. "You will reinstate Jason Miller immediately. And you will, in front of this entire school, publicly apologize." To him, Jason stood motionless, his own heart pounding so loudly he could hear it in his ears. Was this really happening? The man who had so cruelly, so casually thrown him out, the man who had called him an embarrassment, now had mere seconds to reverse his own unjust decision, or risk the very public and very catastrophic wrath of a billionaire. Kingston checked his expensive and very intimidating watch. "For seconds," he said, his voice a quiet and very final. Sound Principal Carter cleared his throat, his own voice a weak, pathetic squeak. "Mr. Kingston," he stammered, I understand your concerns, but these kinds of matters, they require proper—" 3 seconds, Kingston interrupted, his own voice now as cold and as hard as steel. Sweat began to form on Carter's brow. The other board members, who had been standing so proudly behind him just a few moments before, now began to shift uncomfortably. $10 million was a fortune their school could not and would not afford to lose. 2 seconds. Kingston said, his voice even, but the warning in it was now unmistakable. Carter inhaled sharply. And then he let out a loud, forced, and very unconvincing chuckle. "Of course," he exclaimed, his own voice now trembling slightly as he turned toward the silent, watching students and staff. "Of course, we would be honored to welcome Jason Miller back to our student body. This has all just been a terrible misunderstanding?" He then turned to the sea of students and staff, his own face now a mask of a deep and very public regret. I deeply regret any unfair treatment that Jason may have received," he said. "And as the principal of this esteemed institution, I take full and complete responsibility for this oversight. And I would like to officially reinstate him immediately." Jason's stomach tightened. The apology sounded rehearsed, hollow, but it didn't matter. He had one. Kingston did not react right away. He let the silence stretch, just long enough to make Carter sweat even more. And then, With a small, almost imperceptible nod, he gestured toward his assistant, the paperwork. He said, "Will be sent to your office. Make sure that it is processed today." Carter nodded quickly, wiping his no-glistening forehead with a trembling hand. The moment he had stepped back, the students had erupted in a wave of hushed, disbelieving whispers. Some of them grinned at Jason, others just looked completely and utterly stunned. He could hear the bits and the pieces of their murmurs. "I can't believe this. He got expelled yesterday and now he's back. A billionaire, ... A billionaire just fought for him." Jason exhaled slowly, trying to process what had just happened. Less than 24 hours ago, he had been humiliated in front of this entire school. And now, he had returned in a helicopter. Backed by one of the most powerful men in the entire country, Kingston turned to him. "This is not just about coming back, son," he said quietly. "This is about what comes next." Jason nodded, still unsure of what to say. Kingston had saved him, but he had a feeling that this was only the beginning of something much, much bigger. The billionaire looked at his assistant and gestured toward the waiting, still humming, helicopter. "Let's go," he said. "We have work to do." Jason hesitated. "Wait," he said. "I have to stay, right?" Kingston smiled, a small and very mysterious smile. "You can," he said, "if you want to. But I am offering you something better." Jason's own stomach flipped. Kingston stepped a little closer, lowering his voice. "I am funding a new national scholarship program," he said, "for students just like you. Students who work hard but who are so often, and so unfairly, overlooked. And you," he finished, "will be its very first recipient." Jason blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means," Kingston said, "that you will not just be returning to this school. You will be moving forward. I want you to train under my own personal team. I want you to learn from the very best. An education is important, Jason, but a real-world experience. That is what sets the true leaders apart. You have a potential son. A potential I have not seen in a very long time. And I intend to make sure that you use it." Jason felt his throat tighten. A part of him wanted to stay, to walk back into those hallowed and now very humbled halls, and to prove to Principal Carter and to Mason and to all the rest of them that he belonged there. But another, much wiser, part of him knew the truth. This was bigger than Westbridge Academy. This was his one true chance to break free from everything and everyone that had ever held him back. His father's words echoed in his mind.
"Opportunities.
Do not wait, son. When one knocks, you open the door." Jason swallowed hard and with a new and very powerful sense of his own very real worth. He met Kingston's gaze as the helicopter lifted off the ground, the entire school shrinking below him. Jason leaned back in his seat, his mind still racing. "You have made the right decision," Kingston had said from across the cabin. And as they had soared above the city, Jason had asked, "Where are we going?" Kingston had smiled, a real and very genuine smile. "To your future, son," he had said, "to your future." And for the very first time in his entire and very difficult life, Jason didn't just hope for a better future. He knew with a certainty that was as bright and as brilliant as the sun in the sky, that it was finally and truly coming